Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about deductive reasoning some more. We're going to go over concepts like validity and soundness. We'll also talk about defending premises so that they lead to the conclusion in a clear way as well. So as you know from our last video, or if you don't know from our last video, deductive arguments, they can have two attributes, valid or sound. A deductive argument is valid when, if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. And then a sound argument is an argument that is valid and one that has true premises. Okay. So I want you to notice something about this, about the definition of validity. It says if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. It doesn't say anything about the premises being true themselves, right? It says if the premises are true. So I want to show you a valid argument without any words. This is a valid argument. Let me make this a little bit clearer. So this little fellow right here, this is a conditional operator. It means if, then. And so the way this argument reads is if x, then y, x, therefore y. So you have, then this is completely valid because if premise 1 is true, and if premise 2 is true, then the conclusion must be true. But it has no words in it. And so the argument is not sound, but the argument is valid. The reason why the argument can't be sound is because there's no words here. It doesn't mean anything. This means nothing. Soundness has to have something that we call semantics. There has to be, true, either true or false. If X, then Y, all by itself out of context, can't be true or false. So soundness then requires something, meaning of words. It requires semantics, where validity doesn't. Validity is something more along the lines of syntax and grammar. So you're thinking of the grammar and then the meaning. So a deductive argument, it can be valid, that is, the premise is true, the conclusion is true, but it doesn't have to have any words. It doesn't have to have any meaning of the terms. It's important to understand that because deductive argument, the validity when it comes to deductive arguments has absolutely nothing to do with the words that are on the page at all. It has to do with the structure of the argument and the way these x's and y's revolve around these things called operators. So some arguments are valid and some are invalid. A deductive argument that is valid is called the modus ponens, and that's what I just showed you. If x, then y, x, therefore y. And so you notice, right? If it's true that if I have my driver's license, I pass a written test. I have my driver's license. You know, therefore, that I passed my written test. If it's raining, then it's cloudy. If that's true, if that statement is true, specifically that if it's raining, it's cloudy, and it's raining, then, because number 1 is true, this one, number 3, has to be true. So validity is something more along the lines of, say, like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? PEMDAS, that's a B. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. You can follow the order of operations with absolutely no quantities at all. They can all be variables, right? You can have variables as exponents, you can have variables as root numbers, you can all the variables, it doesn't matter. And if you follow the order of operations, you'll get a set of letters and variables that kind of come out at the end, but you won't have any quantities. This is the same idea with validity. Validity is like the structure of it, the correct way to put it together, so it does what we call preserve the truth. A valid argument will preserve the truth from the beginning to the end. And it's similar to this. If, right, you follow the order of operations in arithmetic, and you do the quantification, you perform the functions correctly, then you will have the correct answer. It's this idea with deductive reasoning too. Remember, deductive reasoning, mathematics is a form of deductive reasoning. So it's the same idea with deductive reasoning when it comes to logic as well. Follow the order of operations. You must have the argument structured in such a way that if the premises are true, the conclusion must be true. And there's a set of those that you'll be learning, a set of those valid arguments. In addition, you have to worry about later what the arguments mean. That is, what your x's and y's actually represent. Because at that point, once we figure out what we want to say, then at that point, then we can figure out whether or not our argument's sound or not. If it's raining, then it's cloudy. It's raining, if it's cloudy. There's a couple other ways I want you to kind of think about the way premises relate to each other. Premises, I like to think of premises kind of like jigsaw puzzles. And so if you're unaware of what a jigsaw puzzle is, there's a bunch of little pieces, like, you know, I'm not an artist, okay? Like this, you know, that's pretty good. And then you have like another piece, like we'll say it's like, you know, you have all these different pieces and they all kind of fit together in different ways, right? And when you get all the pieces together, what happens is there's like a face behind it. And you're like, oh, I see it is, it's Charlie or something. And, you know, it doesn't matter, you know? So the idea of the jigsaw puzzle is all the little pieces of the jigsaw, all the jigsaw puzzle pieces have little tiny images on them. And you can't tell what the whole image is until you put them all together in the right way. But when you put all the pieces together in the right way, all of a sudden the picture of Charlie or the picture of the fluffy cat emerges. And you're like, oh, that picture just kind of emerged. There's a fluffy cat. The same thing is true with your premises, with validity. Validity, if you have a valid argument, then it should work that way. So consider this. If I have, my driver's license, then I passed the written test. Now imagine this is true. This is a premise. Remember, this is part of an argument. So say this is true. If I have my driver's license, I passed the written test. Now, if I tell you I did not pass the written test, squiggly means not. All of a sudden you know something without having to know the details. You know that I don't have my driver's license. If it's true that if this premise is true, if I have my driver's license, then I pass the written test. Then you say, I did not pass the written test. Well, you know all of a sudden that you do not have your driver's license. And this kind of just emerges from it. Now, if that was more difficult for you to see, if that was slightly difficult for you to see, I want to put it a different way. If I have my driver's license, I pass the written test. I have my driver's license. I don't even need to put pass the written test in 3, you know it already. This is the idea. So consider this kind of concept related to the jigsaw puzzle piece concept. When an argument is valid, the conclusion emerges from the premises. Just like when a jigsaw puzzle pieces are put together properly, the conclusion emerges, or the image emerges from those pieces. Now, I want you to consider two other kind of analogies here. And one of them is like the stepping stone analogy and having to do with the garden. So your premises are like stepping stones. Imagine this is you. Here you are, happy. And say you want to get to this beautiful, wow, that's dead. You want to get to this beautiful garden over here. That's beautiful, okay? So what you do is you see the stepping stone, And you're like, see this stepping stone, just do this stepping stone. And you can see that, oh, okay, all those stepping stones lead to my beautiful garden that I want to go to. Consider this variation. These stepping stones are raised in the air like 100 feet. And under these stepping stones, on the way to your beloved garden, is hot lava. All right, so imagine there's hot lava down here. You don't want to go into hot lava. It's not fun. So, but nevertheless, you want to get to that garden. What's the first thing that you want to know before you step on one of these stepping stones? Well, keep in mind, there's probably two goals here. One is to get to the garden, right? Because that's our stipulated goal. The other one is to probably not die, right? So the first thing you probably want to check is, well, for me, what I want to check is I want to make sure if I stepped on this stepping stone, it would support my weight. Another thing that I want to check is make sure that this stepping stone leads to this one, and this one leads to this one, this one leads to this one, etc., and eventually to the garden. That's the main goal. Remember, our primary goal is to go to the garden. The only reason we're risking the hot lava is to go to the garden. So really the first thing you want to know is whether or not these stepping stones work together in a system to bring you to where you want to go. Now it looks like they do. Next thing you want to check is the first thing I brought up. Specifically, do these structures, these support beams or pillars have any cracks in them? If I step on this bad boy, am I going to fall down into the hot lava? I don't, that would be bad, right? I don't want that to happen to me. So I check for it. I check for support. Now, so consider this kind of a connection. So you have this right here, the garden is your conclusion. These friends right here are, the stepping stones are your premises. That's an awful representation, but so these are your premises. Okay, so you have a conclusion and you have sets of premises. What about the support beams? What in the heck are those? These supports right here, these are your reasons for the truth of your premises. This is your reasons for the truth of your premise. It's the support here. So remember, well, not remember, but premises in a deductive argument, they do all the work for you. I'm gonna write one up here real quick. If X, then Y. X, Y. If this one's true, this one's true, this one has to be true. See this one? This premise leads to this pretty clearly. So this premise together with that one, and together with that one, together with that one, together with that one, leads to the conclusion. But what if I don't believe that this is true? What if I'm like, why? It's not true that if X and Y. Maybe I'm like, it's not true that if I have my driver's license, I pass the written test. Maybe I don't believe that, right? Well, if it's true that, one, if I have my driver's license, I pass the written test. If that's true, and it's true that I have my driver's license, right, then it's true that I pass the written test. So what we need to do then is we need to convince your readers that these premises are true. So, in the stylings of our color coding here, the premise will be in red, like the stepping stones. If I have my driver's license, I pass the written test. Okay. Then what you do is, after you have that stated, you defend why this is true. you give like a paragraph explanation for why it's the case that if you have a driver's license, then you've passed your written test. And then what you get, and that's the support for the premise. And if you just do that again for your next premise, right? Your next premise is, number 2 is I have my driver's license. So then what you do is you give me a paragraph explanation for why it's the case that this premise is true. Then at the end, you have the conclusion. Namely, that I passed my written test. And then this conclusion just follows from this and this. So that's all you have to say. You have to give me a quick explanation for why if this is true and this is true, then this has to be true. And you've already done the job of explaining why that's true. And you've already done the work of explaining why this is true. So the conclusion emerges, like a fluffy cat emerges from the jigsaw puzzle pieces. And this is kind of what we'll be doing in our course. If you're watching this for one of our particular courses, I'm gonna show you how to write these arguments out and then defend these premises as stated. So that at the end, you can write a paper where if the parts of it are true, the end of it has to be true. So this is going to be like the structure of our first part of our class. All right, hopefully this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, please reach out.